Whether our self-talk is silent in our head or whether it's verbal out loud, I'm too young, can't do that. Too old, it's too late for that. I don't have the right degree. Your self-talk is the root cause of it. When you're focused on something that is outside of your control, no one will say this in a group, but they'll secretly tell me one-on-one. Even though we think that our self-talk is only affecting us, it shows up as the reality is we experience a situation, and then the first thing we do is we tell ourselves a story. I experienced 3 decades of debilitating depression and alcoholism. It wasn't until number 1, I really want to say.
In this week's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome someone who brings light bulb moments and clarity in the world of change. Marianne Renner is a keynote speaker and coach who empowers leadership teams and growth-minded leaders to conquer uncertainty, conflict, and constant change, starting with themselves. With a background rooted in studying human behavior and an ability to dissect the why behind our decisions, Marianne guides us, as she does her clients, to shift paradigms and develop language and mindsets that rise above the chaos. We share real-life narratives to get to the bottom of where our self-talk is born and how changing it is a daily practice in creating healthy patterns. Take a listen. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together. Your platform is on language and self-talk, and what I believe is that there are some small, almost what we would perceive as insignificant daily words we use that are actually pretty impactful. And you've talked about this, right? I am busy, I am tired, I am sleepy. And when we're saying this either to ourselves or out loud, that's part of what needs to be corrected. And that takes a lot of intention. Would you agree? We could start there.
Yeah, it does. It takes practice, really, is what it takes, because we're asking people to change habit patterns.
Right.
And the research says up to 95% of what we do and say all day long is habitual. Mm-hmm. And so, it ranges, it starts around 50%, but, so that makes it really hard to identify the sabotaging stories that we're telling ourselves, the self-talk. What I hear often, the things that I hear so often are any kind of version of I'm not good enough. I'm too young. Can't do that. Too old. It's too late for that. I don't have the right degree. I don't have the right opportunity. It's all the reasons we can't do something, all the reasons something won't work. And at the end of the day, all different versions of, why we believe we're just not good enough.
Right. Right. I'm going to really call out my son on this while calling myself out, because I remember a time where my adjective, I guess, every time I got home was, hey, how was your day? I'm tired. And my son, who is 25 years old, that is literally his adjective all the time. And so the reason I want to call him out and myself out is because that is our narrative very often. And that's how we're living our lives. And then is it true that if we tell ourselves that is the life we're going to lead, just tired?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. Like the words that we speak, because we're listening. And, whether our self-talk is silent in our head or whether it's verbal out loud, like when it's verbal out loud, it's going out into the air and coming back into our own ears. And so it tends to be self-fulfilling. And there are so many different versions of stories that we tell ourselves that keep us stuck. Yeah. The problem is, and this, I'm tired, it's a really great example, when we focus on the problems that are outside of ourselves, and we'll just use this example that you shared, if I'm tired in the context, and I'm making some assumptions here, in the context is like, there's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
And that will just, again, exacerbate the problem, because what happens when you're focused on a situation that you don't have control over? What does that do for you?
I mean, yeah, I feel like at the time it created just like a lot of anxiety of,
Absolutely.
something having control over me. And
Absolutely.
by the way, I mean, I feel like over time, learning the importance of self-talk has completely inversed my life, right?
Yeah.
Once I started to focus on that, but at the time it created a lot of anxiety, a lot of victimhood, that
Yeah.
it was the external world running
Mhm.
my life versus you, the person who has control over fixing that.
Yeah.
So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you're focused on something that is outside of your control, it drains your energy.
Mhm.
It increases your anxiety. It increases your sense of overwhelm. And so if we're thinking about whether it's personal life or professional, I do a lot of work with leaders in the professional workplace. It really impacts your performance.
Right.
And so, right, because I'm tired, I'm more anxious. But when we focus on something that's within our control, what does that do to your energy?
Sure.
Increases your energy, your motivation, your inspiration, all of those things.
Right.
So oftentimes, Chris, when I'm talking with leaders or professionals in the workplace, and we're talking about things like self-talk, well, the biggest sabotaging story, like I mentioned, is any version of how I'm not good enough. But we keep it to ourselves. Leaders keep that to themselves. They don't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
In fact, they'll often tell me, I'm just so worried that it's only a matter of time before everybody else figures out that I'm not as good as they think I am.
Mm-hmm.
And they tell me as though it's their own. First of all, two things. Number one, they think they're the only ones, which is part of the reason I wrote the book, because no one will say this in a group if I'm at a conference or something, but they'll secretly tell me one-on-one.
Right.
And I want to shake them and say, I've already had this conversation 10 times today. I mean, everybody is on a sort of continuum of some degree of this.
Right.
And so, but the other thing that they tell me, as though they can keep it to themselves, and as long as nobody finds out, they can sort of go along unrecognized. But here's the problem. What people don't realize is that even though we think that our self-talk is only affecting us, it leaks out.
Right.
And it shows up in the workplace and professional life. It shows up as gossip.
Yeah.
It shows up as being overly critical or judgmental of others.
Mm-hmm.
It shows up as backdoor politics, like all of these things that end up creating even more chaos.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so critical, not only for our own performance and our ability to lead and show up and increase our degree of joy, but also the way we're affecting other people around us that we may not even be aware of.
Yeah. I'm glad that you went down the leadership path with this, because I probably became, my first role as a CFO was probably, I'd been already in practice for about 15 years before I worked my way into the CFO role with all of this, right?
Yeah.
And so you think to yourself, well, I got myself into this leadership role until my CEO, who I worked with directly, every time I'd sort of like act like, be a victim of things, he'd be like, Chris, nothing's happening to you. This is all you. This is all you doing this. And imagine being in that role, responsible for other people not being this way, having to face that. So if you think about it, I spent 15 years worked myself into a leadership role with all of this in my head. And so I think, at least for me, that's why I think this topic and episode is so important, because the way that you're almost like mainstreaming, hey, this happens to everyone. Everyone's going through this, is a very critical message for people to hear. So I thank you for going down that route, because I think this, like, imagine getting into an executive role,
Yeah.
thinking this, like, oh, it's all going to come to a head. People are
Yeah.
going to realize this about me,
Yeah.
you know, and falling into those patterns you were talking about. So
Yeah.
can we just walk into that and
Mhm.
how people become comfortable with the fact that this happens to
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
and how we can work our way out of that?
Absolutely. I love that you used the word mainstreaming. That's a perfect word to describe what we're talking about. Mainstreaming. I'm gonna steal that because
Go ahead.
listen. I'll go to a conference and I kind of discovered this just through individual coaching clients. Either they're coming to me in, the confidential one-on-one space, or people are coming up to me at a conference, sort of sidebar conversations one by one. And I'm just hearing this over and over and over. And it's also my own personal experience as well. So I knew that if I brought this to a large group, that people would shake their heads. It's almost like I'm giving them permission to talk about it. It's okay to have this conversation. The other thing that you just said that I want to kind of pause on is how you rose up into that higher level of leadership position. And because this affects everybody. It doesn't matter your level of responsibility. It doesn't matter your role or what you do. In fact, the higher the level, the responsibility, the more I hear this from people, the more this can be impactful. And so, I'll pull up a slide when I'm speaking at a conference, and it says, I believe that your self-talk to be 80% of the root cause of 80% of the challenges in the workplace. So your self-talk is the root cause of 80% of the challenges. That's it. So then I ask the audience, how many of you think that number's too high? They'll say, yeah, I agree. Self-talk's an issue, but 80%, that's a lot. We're in the workplace. There are a lot of challenges. That's too high. So
Right.
I get a couple hands go up.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, how many of you think it's too low? Maybe it's even higher. Self-talk's bigger than that. And I get a few more hands go up. But then I'll say, how many of you think it's just right? And like most people in the room, our hands are going up. And the thing is that, because that's a big number.
Yeah.
And because of all of the things that we're talking about, where self-talk is impacting the gossip, the backdoor politics, all these things that just suck the life out of us. When we
Yeah.
talk about work, when I talk with professionals in the workplace, it's usually not the work that drains their energy. They usually love the work that they do, but it's all this other stuff that they'll just say, I just feel like it's just sucking the life out of me. So what if we could create a culture in an organization of people that are mastering their self-talk and changing the way that they talk to themselves and turning everything around? I mean, that's some powerful stuff.
Right. That's incredible. And I'm going to go into, I'm not sure what speech it was where you were talking about, because we could go in that direction. Why? Do you call it the 5 whys, or do you just keep drilling down the why until the problem, the problem's been solved?
Yeah. Well, the 5 whys is a tool that I use in the workplace to get to the root cause. And that whole premise, I didn't invent that. That comes from Toyota Production System.
Right.
But if you ask yourself the question why, and you ask it 5 times, you would get to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
But the other thing, I think the context of why is really, really powerful to be talking about, is because we often use it in a negative connotation. Why me? Why this? Why now?
Right.
Right? All of these different ways, I'm going to say they're different ways to express the sentiment of it's not fair.
True.
And there are a lot of people that get really stuck in that. I mean, you mentioned the phrase, like, kind of the victim mindset.
Right.
This was really big during the pandemic. And by the way, your stories can be valid. And I'm not even, suggesting that they're not valid. But what I am suggesting is, where do we want to place our focus? what's going to help us move forward. So the more we get stuck in why me, why this, why now, it really, if you think about it, those are all different ways of it's not fair. It just keeps us stuck. Like I always say, we're like an old tennis shoe spinning around in a clothes dryer, like with our thoughts. And so we want to get out of that spin cycle. We want to be able to move forward.
Right. And I think a really good example of, what you just said is that there are also people who have had very difficult circumstances. And I don't think it's fair to compare, but like that are very, very difficult circumstances that don't get trapped in that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of like, well, what is different about them versus someone else that I guess if you were to compare the upbringing, the situation that they're living in, is not as severe, but there are still people coming out of severe critical situations that manage to find their way out of that. And, I think that's a good point to bring up too, because it helps you shift out of victimhood a bit. And, again, I think the trick is self-talk. I really think it's the words we say in our heads or outside to other people, out loud, whatever it is. And what would be sort of a technique? Like, what would be the first thing you'd recommend to someone?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that question. Before I do, you said something. I want to just pause on something that you said. Sure. Okay. That we all sort of have different experiences. Those experiences affect how we show up. Some people are able to move forward from a difficult experience. Others get stuck. So the way the whole impetus for me writing this book comes from my own personal experience. Yeah. Where I experienced 3 decades of debilitating depression and alcoholism. And so I just remember the first time I ever remember, I used to cry in my bed at night and just cry out loud with tears down my face. God, let me die in my sleep. I mean, I was as bad of a case as you could get.
Right.
And the first time I remember crying out that way, I was 11 years old. Yeah. And so, and that continued, this really kind of, everything, hospitalization, suicide attempts, treatment centers, all of that. And that lasted for 30 years. And I mean, doctors wrote me off, the best hope for you, Marianne, is, don't get worse, because it's chronic. You have a chronic major depression. That was the diagnosis. Yeah. And so over all those years, I was always, every decision I made, every choice was just to make the bad feelings go away. Okay. Because we talk about this in the book, that's usually what we're doing. We make decisions because we either want to feel something good or we want to avoid a feeling that we label as bad. Okay. And so in my search for relief from the bad feelings, I tried workaholism, didn't work. Alcoholism, didn't work. But in that process, in that journey, I read every book I could get my hands on, every tool. And over time, the one thing that changed everything for me was changing my self-talk. That's a pretty powerful tool. I had every kind of therapy, every kind of psychiatrist, every medication, every combination. And this was the number one most powerful thing. So that's, number one, I really want to say, like, this came out of my experience, but I was really stuck in that victimhood as well. It wasn't until I started changing that everything started changing for me. And so then I thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder if it worked for me, if it would work for other people. So I started sharing the tools that I discovered with others, and I started to see every outcome of their life change. Like careers were changing, financial situations. Yeah. So to answer your question more directly about the tools, there's a chapter in the book that I use. I call it the SEER framework. So SEER is an acronym. And the reason is because we sort of develop these habit patterns, these thoughts. Our stories are formed at a very young age. And I had all of those questions because my depression started shortly after my mom died when I was 9 years old.
Sorry for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And in that moment, I remember all those why me, right? All of the things that I just mentioned, why this and why
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us, our stories develop when we're young, and
Yeah.
we are victims when we're young.
Yeah.
But the problem is once we develop habitual thought patterns that start at a young age, they start to just become habits and unconscious, and we carry those with us through adulthood.
Yeah.
So they're valid at some point and even helpful in how we cope as a very young person at some point. But now how do we recognize that that's what's going on and change it? So the SEER framework, stands for this. The first of all, we don't know that we're telling ourselves stories. We think like this is the fact. This is
Yeah.
the fact of the matter. But the reality is we experience a situation,
Yeah.
and then the first thing we do is we tell ourselves a story about the situation.
Yeah.
Okay. But we don't realize it, but that's what we're doing. Every story that we tell evokes an emotion.
Yeah.
And the emotion that we feel informs our action.
Yeah.
And the action we take produces the result.
Mm-hmm.
So story plus emotion, right? Plus action equals result. So if you can understand that, then you can start to reverse engineer the process.
Okay.
If you want a different result, you need to take a different action. To take a different action, you want a different emotion. And to get the different emotion, you change the story. So the tool is really simple. I mean, you just recognize, okay, I'm experiencing an emotion. Like I'm really angry. I'm really frustrated. You can't stop ruminating about all these things that are bothering me.
Yeah.
Okay, back up. What's the thought you're telling yourself that's evoking that emotion?
Yeah.
And then what new thought would evoke a different emotion?
Right. And at least it may not be the perfect solution, but at least it's something
Right.
different, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always think of mistakes as not being a bad thing, but
Yeah.
I feel like at least if you're trying something different, it would be
Yes.
a new and different mistake
Yes.
in your journey to finding the right way to either manage a situation or address
Yeah.
a problem you're having, but at least make it a new mistake. But if you're
Yes.
tripping over that same stone over and over again, I think, that's where that work needs to happen.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you like hearing this or not, but like I commend you for that, being able to overcome these kinds of situations and, that language, that limiting belief that you may have had. I think what's also important to share is that you are always working on that, right? Like that's not
Yeah.
erased. That doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You just have to be very intentional about catching it and fixing it. Correct?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's really hard. There's sections in the book about how do you separate story from the situation? Because
Yeah.
because we confuse that we think our stories are the situation. And so, recognizing the emotions and using them as alarm bells that
Yeah.
helps us do that. I really like your example. I want to kind of revisit your example of seeing a mistake as a learning versus failure, because that's a great example of a story we tell ourselves. It's, I see this in the workplace all the time. Somebody is frustrated, they're upset. Why? Because I made a mistake. Okay. The fact is, 2 plus 2 is supposed to equal 4, and you said 2 plus 2 equals 6. Okay. The fact is there was a mistake. But then what's the story you're telling yourself about that?
Right.
I shouldn't make mistakes. I'm not smart if I make a mistake. Okay, so what's a new story you
Yeah.
can tell yourself? And you just said it perfectly. Oh, a mistake isn't a failure. A mistake, it doesn't mean something's wrong with me. It means I can learn from the situation.
Sure. I mean, I always
That's a great example.
Yeah, I mean, I always think of things not going my way, which would be in a perfect world, I would have the result that I'm looking for exactly as I would want it, but also recognizing, okay, what is the blessing in this? I look at things in terms like that. But again, I'm not perfect at it. I still get stuck in my, gosh, Chris, what were you thinking? Even on Monday, when we couldn't get the technology to work, I walked away from that thinking, Chris, you should have thought of every possible solution to what was happening. And then I had to take a step back and say, where is that coming from? Where is that coming from?
Yeah, so
Because
good.
that is I do not have control of electricity in storms. I really don't,
Yeah.
whether I'm hardwired, Wi-Fi, none of that matters. But I think it's like, I do think it can be difficult to get yourself to that point where you're catching yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I think is harder than fixing it,
Yes.
because again, going into patterns and our thought patterns, and if we grew up with a family that was like that and
Yeah.
negative and nasty self-talk to themselves, that I think the catching yourself when it's happening is probably the hardest part. It is for me.
Yeah.
Would you agree with
Yeah.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, this is a great example.
Yeah.
As I'm just curious. I'm filled with
Yeah.
curiosity.
Me too.
When you went through that situation,
Right.
you said you walked away and you were saying what's wrong with you. You should have known.
Yeah.
And you, at some point in that process, you caught yourself. What
Right.
was the giveaway that you had sabotaging self-talk that you wanted to change? How did you figure that out? What led you to that conclusion?
Well, I think for me at least it's the like I
Yes,
will
that's
literally
it.
go ugh,
That's
and
it.
then I have to be like, hold on.
Yeah.
What is that? Sometimes it's just words, but I have a
Yeah.
tendency that when things
Yeah.
aren't going as planned, my first
Yep.
reaction is like, ugh,
Yeah.
literally face,
That's
like
it.
body language, all of that.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that took me a really long time to realize that that's not just cute and funny. That's actually like a response
Mm-hmm.
to something.
Yeah.
But to
It's the
watch,
emotion,
yeah,
right? So that's the best way to identify if you're telling yourself, because we don't know, we're going throughout the day and we're going to be unaware that we're telling
yeah,
ourselves stories. So how do people say, how do I become aware? If I'm not aware, how do I become aware?
yeah,
The emotion is the best way because we don't notice the story, but
right,
we do notice how we feel.
right,
I feel, my face is hot. And then what are the physical examples of that emotion? My face is hot, my chest is tight, my
yeah,
heart is pounding. All of those things.
yeah,
I'm tense, my shoulders are feeling
right,
tight, all
hmm,
of those things. So that's the best way. And I always say, just because people don't want to acknowledge hard feeling emotions, they don't like them,
hmm,
but they are really, really there to help you. That's the best way to identify your
right,
story. Just like if my alarm goes off in the morning at 5 a.m.,
yeah,
it's a signal to tell me something.
right,
And in that case, it's telling me it's time to get up.
yeah,
And you can use your emotions the same way. They're an alarm signal there to
hmm,
tell you something.
right,
And in this example, they can be there to tell you maybe there's a story I'm telling myself that I could identify a new story that would
yeah,
better serve me.
right, right. And I did all the whys on that. I
Yeah,
I reverse engineered, like, where's this coming from?
so
Why is
good.
this I mean, even down the rabbit hole of, I want to be taken seriously with my podcast and the guests that I'm bringing on, and like
Yeah,
it literally went all the way down
yeah,
until I really had to say to myself, you don't have control over thunderstorms.
mm-hmm.
And what is the blessing? Look at how kind Marianne Renner was
Oh,
to
yes,
be
very
like
generous.
willing
Thank
to
you.
reschedule, not just reschedule, but reschedule so quickly, because it's only happened one other time. And then I had to wait like 4 months to
Yeah.
be able to schedule the
Oh my
guests. So,
goodness.
again, what is the blessing?
Mm-hmm.
What is the blessing, right? And
Yeah,
then,
yeah,
what were my learnings? Is there anything when I'm not hot-headed, when I'm not beating myself up, what steps can I take to have a workaround when these things happen? Maybe
mm-hmm.
the workaround even has to be like, hey, guest, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like, don't even bother joining
Yeah.
and wasting half an hour trying to get things work.
Yeah.
But that is even a great example that I can share with you that I
Yeah.
personally had with you.
Yes.
And
I love that example.
there are a million examples like that we would have even in a day.
Yes. In a day. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay. Can we have a little fun with this example?
of course, absolutely,
Okay. Because I'm thinking we can even go a little bit deeper.
of
When
course.
when you say,
Yeah,
when you say, when you're walking through the 5 whys, I'm going to
yeah,
go a little bit deeper in the whys
of
with this
course.
example with you.
Yep.
So, why is it that you told yourself, I should have figured out all of the possibilities?
Well, I can explain that. So definitely raised, I don't know if it was raised, but eventually over time, I became a perfectionist.
hmm
And I've had to remind myself there's no such thing.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. That's why I can say things like, at least have a new mistake, have a different mistake.
Uh-huh.
But again, I have to tell myself that.
Yeah.
But definitely it's just being a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I can go back to my childhood. Even I'm the youngest of 3, of being told, oh, out of the 3 of you, you are the one that's gonna come out the best.
Okay.
That's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure.
So,
You're the
so,
smartest.
so I just so perfectionism,
Yeah.
what's the story you tell yourself if you're not perfect, if you make
Uh-huh.
mistakes and you're not the
Yeah.
best of the 3,
Uh-huh.
then what?
Well, then I'm not gonna be taken seriously.
Uh-huh.
You'll be considered a joke.
Yeah.
Why are you even trying this?
Okay. So you're not good
Okay,
enough.
good enough, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That is
Yeah.
the root of, I'm going to tell you almost every conversation that I
Yeah.
have with
Definitely
human
imposter syndrome.
earthlings.
Definitely.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a coaching client the other day, a high level leader in an organization, and I said,
Mhm.
why do you think that you should never make mistakes as a leader? And it usually came down to,
Yeah.
what are people going to think of me? That kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So I love your example of the 5 whys, because that helps you get to that root, and because it shines a spotlight
Right.
on the story. Do we go,
Right.
oh yeah, that's really, really a little crazy. And then, there's a tool in the book, which, by the way, so the book has a deeper dive into my personal journey and how I discovered these lessons, dozens and dozens of tools like the SEER framework, and then examples of how others have used these tools. But the thing about the tools is they're very simple, because simple works. If it's so complicated, we're
Sure.
just not going to,
Yeah.
we're not going to use it. But one of the tools is, I tell people, imagine a child that you love. For some, it's their own children.
Yeah.
I have a godson that I adore. So just imagine a child you love, and they made a mistake. Would you talk to them the way you talk to yourself? Oh, you're so stupid.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You should have gotten it right. What's the matter with you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, like this is terrible. You'd never say that to a child that
Yeah.
you love.
Except sometimes we do.
Ooh.
Because I do believe that our patterns come from somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that came from the way that we were raised, that came from the way our parents were raised, and that's the way, we know it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Again, why I feel like, especially as a Gen Xer, like, we were raised like, be tough, be this, and
Yeah.
I think it's important to break those patterns.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where collectively we get better.
Yeah.
But I do believe that, I mean, I know I've been hard on my kids, but I've seen other people be very hard on their kids. And I'm glad you brought up that example, because maybe you wouldn't talk to your kid like that, but I've seen people talk to their kids that way.
Wow.
And then imagine if you're talking to a child that way, and then who do they become in the future?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know you made that comparison, but it's a good example of what we shouldn't do
Mm-hmm.
if someone's doing that. I think it's
Yeah.
important to point that out.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It's easier, in my experience,
Yeah.
it's easier for someone to turn the telescope the other direction
Yeah.
and say, oh, what would I say to a best friend? What would I say to a child I love? What would I say to someone I really cared about? And
Yeah.
that tends to be one of the most helpful tools for people to recognize
Yeah.
how harmful their own self-talk is, and to say,
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't want to say that to myself anymore.
Yeah, we had someone recently on the show, Britt Frank, and one of the ways that she says is are you your own ally?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
speaking, are you talking to yourself? Like, what do you say to your best friend? And are you saying those
Right.
things? But, we're great at giving
Yeah.
advice that we don't take. But,
Right.
are you
Right.
talking to yourself like your own best friend?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, that goes back to, are you talking to a child the way that you talk
Mm-hmm.
to yourself in your own head?
Yeah.
Um, because I think those patterns really come from there.
Yeah.
Would you say that that's the
Sure.
case?
It can be. It
Our
can be.
upbringing?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it can be. Usually, so the research says that, the stories that we tell ourselves, the beliefs that we hold, a majority of those are formed by age 7.
There you go.
And then we carry those with us without recognizing it. I always think when I was little, we used to watch the Saturday morning cartoon. It was called Schoolhouse Rock.
Oh,
I
I
don't know if
love
this is
that. I love
okay.
Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah, I
Conjunction,
remember.
junction, what's your
Yes.
function? I'm
Yeah.
just a bill sitting
Yeah.
on happy. Well, so why can we remember those when we probably haven't seen them in, 20 years, 30 years or more? And for those that are listening and watching that don't know what that is, there's
Yeah.
something in your childhood that you learned that you
Yeah.
probably haven't revisited directly, but yet you recall it to memory. Because we have, the scientists tell us we have neuroplasticity, which means it's our brain's ability to adapt and change.
Yeah.
And we have the greatest neuroplasticity when we're born, around age 7, adolescence. And the science used to tell us, like, after that, like, that's it. Like, your stories, your beliefs, everything's kind of stuck. Kind of that phrase, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah.
But the modern science today has disproven that, and that we have that neuroplasticity, our brain's ability to adapt and change,
Yeah.
as long as we're alive, which is the great news for any of us that are trying to
Yeah.
change, and anyone who's listening or watching that feels like that I can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm so stuck in my ways. I can't do it. You can. I did it after 30 years of this sabotaging self-talk, and I was as low of a case as anyone
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's so commendable because, to have something so tragic happen to you at a young age, it's almost like you understand where some of that comes from, and
Yeah.
to be able to pull, I call it the pit because I've been there
Yeah.
myself, to
Yeah.
pull
Yeah.
yourself out of that pit
Yeah.
that's made of mud that you keep
Yeah.
sliding every time you try to get out of. Like
Mhm.
that's how it's been in my world.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. What did you have a breaking point?
Yeah, I did. And by the way, thank you for saying that. But there's one reason that I share the stories, because I mean, most people aren't starting from that low, and I want people to understand that there is hope. I mean,
Yes.
because they're probably not starting that low. So this is good. This is really good news.
Yeah.
There's the first chapter in the book tells my story, and then chapter 2 talks about this sort of aha light bulb moment that I had.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'd been trying to figure this stuff out for a very long time. But I was getting ready for work one morning, and I'm in the bathroom and I'm crying and can't even keep the mascara on my eyelashes. It's running down my face because I was crying and saying, I can't live like this anymore. Can't live
Yeah.
like this anymore. I kept saying that over and over. Okay. So sabotaging self-talk. If I'm telling myself I can't live like this anymore, there's only 2 options to that. Either this depression miraculously lifts, or I won't live anymore. Right. And so I had this kind of suicidal thoughts going on all the time. And I had this moment where I thought, what if I could live like this? And it was a moment of surrender. And in the chapter, I call it accept what is. Accept what is, acceptance. Now, I have to be really, really clear with people, because when they often think about words like surrender and accepting what is, they misunderstand. What I am not saying is that you should lie down and be a doormat.
Right.
You should say, oh, my circumstances are terrible. There's nothing I can do about it. I might as well give up. It's not that. It's more about letting go of the resistance against your current circumstances. So it's the resistance against. I hate it. I hate it. There's a chapter, a story you tell yourself, like, I hate it, that I hate it. I hate it. I hate it, that.
Yeah.
There's just resistance. And when you're in, again, it's that emotional, like, to use your clinical word, arg, arg.
Yeah.
That keeps us stuck when we just stay in that. And so acceptance is about saying, accepting where you're at while you're on the way to where you want to go.
That's beautiful.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I think a lot of people need to hear that, Marianne. Yeah.
You know, when I was little, we used to go up to this lake north of us in Wisconsin, and all the bigger kids were swimming around and floating on their back.
Yeah.
And I wanted my dad to teach me how I want to float on my back. I want to float on my back. So my dad, I don't know if you've ever floated on your back, but he's like, just lay back. You have to relax into the way to put your head back. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, your instinct is not to relax. Your instinct is to sort of retract, kind of resist. And as much as I would resist, I would sink. My butt would go down and I would sink, like a rock. But the moment I figured out how to let go and relax, then I did it. I floated.
Right.
I floated in the water, and it took no effort to float in the water. It didn't take any energy at all. So that was probably one of my favorite metaphors when I was trying to figure out this idea of acceptance and how to explain it to people, because it can have a connotation of opposite of what I'm trying to say. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. I think that's a great example, because in general, in my art moment, right? Once I had my little tantrum that lasted about 15 seconds because I didn't let it go on beyond that, my next thing was just to breathe it out. Right? And it was literally 10 seconds of breath work.
Yes, that's so good.
Like 10 seconds of breath work.
Yes.
Just like this big fat breath, and then letting it out and walking away. I think walking away is important too. I know, like in my work where it's numbers that can frustrate you when they're not working out. And I say, thankfully I work from home, but I say, when I worked in the office, I literally tell my staff, walk away, just walk away. Go take a couple of laps around the building, right? Separate yourself from it. Yeah. And you're probably going to come back to it, and it's going to be like literally right in front of you.
Yes. Yes.
I think there's a lot of merit to that exercise as well, but just the physical part of it is important as well. And but I think floating is I'm in Miami Beach, so I float all the time. But
there you go. It's even easier in the ocean and salt water.
Fresh water is difficult, but I think that is a beautiful way of explaining it that most people will understand, because if you've been in the water, you try to float, definitely relaxing your way into it is the way that it actually works. And I think in life that's what works as well. Just like take a breather. And examine. So we actually use, in the book, we use both of those tools. We talk about a breathe, move, laugh. So number one, we talk about box breathing, because literally, I do this when I'm with people in a group setting, when we're doing a training, and I'll walk them through. So box breathing is something Navy SEALs do. It's breathing into the count of 4, holding your breath for the count of 4, exhaling to the count of 4,
and then doing it 4 times. And so I don't do all 4 with people, but for time's sake, but we'll do maybe 3 deep breaths together in the room.
Yeah.
And I ask people afterward, on a scale of 1 to 5, how differently do you feel after the breathing than you felt before we started? And usually it's an average of 4. I mean, 5, 4, some you get a couple 3s. And that takes less than 60 seconds to do those 4 deep breaths.
Yeah. I've heard of the mental diet before, which is feeding yourself positive language. What do you call it?
Changing your self-talk. It's like changing the story,
Yeah.
because I always say you're the writer of your own story. I started out my journey, I was a newspaper reporter, and I used to write all these stories about other people's lives. And it was really cool, but I never realized that the biggest story I was writing was the story of my own life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, not with a laptop or pen and paper, but with the little typewriter between my ears. And
Yeah.
so, because what's holding people back, Chris, it's not the job market or the
Right.
economy or the government. It's the stories that
Yeah.
you tell yourself. So it's literally writing a different story.
Yeah. And aside from surrender, when you've got your clients that are coming to you saying, no matter what I do, I can't
Can switch
get
it.
myself into
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
whether it's recognizing or even when
Right.
I recognize it, I can't change the words I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying to myself, right?
Yep.
That's a process. And you've been successful at it because I've heard your success stories with it. Um, but we'll get into the most successful story you have, but what has been the most challenging client you've had? Um, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I can answer this question. I mean,
yeah,
it's going to seem like a broad answer, but it's the clearest pattern I've seen. I can give you a pattern. I can
yeah,
almost
yeah,
predict. I try not to. I always have hope for my clients.
yeah,
And I just said this yesterday to a brand new client. The greatest predictor of success is an openness to change.
yes,
It's just an openness. So if I'm talking to someone and sharing some insights and some thoughts, and I'm hearing these 2 words, yeah, but,
oh yeah,
like,
hmm
yeah, but, I think they're not ready yet. Okay. They definitely can change, but they're not ready yet. So
yeah,
that's, if you're, yeah, but, I already tried that. It's going to be tough.
hmm
But if they're saying things like, oh, I never thought of it that way before.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's interesting.
hmm
Then that's how I would recognize an openness to change. So the most successful clients that I have just show up, that's their starting point.
yeah,
The ones that have a hard time making any change, the consistent theme is, yeah, but,
hmm
like they just don't have an openness to learning the tools and all of the
yeah,
things. But I do want to put the caveat, like, they're not ready yet.
yeah,
Like,
hmm
it's just, we're all on a journey, and we're all in
yeah,
a different place in our journey. And, I was in therapy for, decades. I, talked to so many care providers, and why didn't I get this stuff? Why did it take me 30 years to get here? I don't know.
true,
I wasn't ready yet. I
yeah.
wasn't ready until I was ready.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there are a number of, first of all, I believe we should always be in therapy. So,
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
opinion, it would be better to have a
Yeah.
therapist in your world always
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
not your friends or family that you
Yeah.
sometimes hold,
Yeah.
back information
Yeah.
that maybe is not convenient for you to
Right.
have them know. So I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in therapy, but so I believe in that as well. I love how you are pointing out the yeah, but.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that so much. The
Yeah.
same way I have those triggers in my own head of the language I don't want to use, I can hear that in other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
It's
you know?
almost, I said these 2 words. It's almost, when they say it, it's like one word. Yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but,
Yeah.
yeah, but. It sounds like one word. So you asked about the best story. I have several great client stories. But I'll tell you this
Yeah.
one really quickly because I think a lot of people will resonate. So a leader came to me, and she was like maybe manager, high level manager, director level in an
Yeah.
organization. She was so miserable. Chris, she was, when most people come to me, it's, it's like by the time they get to me, they're so miserable. And she said, I just want to quit. She had strained workplace relationships. She was overwhelmed. She felt unappreciated. She said, I'm just going to quit and go clean houses. I said, okay, well, before you make that decision, let's talk about this a little more.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, she just didn't believe that she could ever be appreciated when she was at where she was at. She didn't believe she could ever leave and get another job because her story was, I don't have the right degree. I bring this up because I hear this all the time. And so the story about not having the right degree was, I'm not good enough. Right. I could never do without it. And so we said, well, what if you change that story from not having a particular degree means I'm not good enough, change that to, I got all the way to this director level position in an organization on my own merit, not because of a piece of paper, not because of a resume. I said, what about that? So we started changing her stories. We worked together for a few years. And by the time we stopped working together, you're not even going to believe this. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
She was the CEO of this organization.
Perfect.
I mean, that she had risen up to become the CEO of the organization. And she will say it's all because of changing her self-talk.
1,000%. 1,000%. I hear that a lot from people that'll say to me, hey, how did you get to CFO level? You're not a CPA. Your background is more in accounting than finance. And I'm like, first of all, I believe I can learn. That's a big deal, right? That you believe you can absorb information and then put it out there. And then it's like, I don't need those things either, right? It's like those certifications, those kinds of things, I can still learn and be great in my role. I'm not an HR professional, but I've absorbed that department under me as well because of my willingness to learn and understand what all is involved, and then either be able to understand it myself or hire the right people that know how to do that too. But I think that's a great story because it's almost like gives people so much hope to hear that.
Yeah.
Right. That gets stuck in their narratives of not good enough, don't have this, don't have that, don't have the other. But I think that's a great story, Marianne, that you just shared with us. Yeah,
she's pretty awesome. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, well, she did all the work.
And I think it's important to share, right, that it's not necessarily an overnight thing. There's a lot of work, like personal work that you have to put into. Just for me to recognize my triggers took me a very long time. I wasn't always that way. And I don't know if you would agree with this, but when you have those limiting beliefs, you have that self-talk, and you believe that it's the organization that you're at, even if you leave, you may have
it's going to follow you.
It's going to follow you. Similar relationships anywhere you go. That is
going to follow you everywhere.
That is personal work you have to do.
Yes, because you always play a role. There's a chapter in my book, chapter 3 is how to own your role. Because this is what I tell my clients. Like they come to me, they're like, I got to get out of here. I want to go somewhere else. Okay, well, we got to fix some things where you're at before you can leave. And I have seen this over and over and over. I have one client who changed his self-talk. He came to me, same thing. Boss is a tyrant. I got a 4-hour round trip commute or longer. He's out in the LA area. And so he's like, I said, well, what if we could change some self-talk? So he changed some self-talk, ends up having a great relationship with his boss, who previously was tyrant, ends up getting a job offer at a location that was like right in his backyard. And he said, well, now I have another problem. I said, what's that? He goes, I kind of like where I'm at. I got this great. So he did end up taking the job offer, but he changed everything. He didn't try to change other people. He just changed his self-talk and the way he showed up. Everything changed at his current job. He ends up taking the other one. And I mean, it ended up being his dream job. But I've seen that over and over too. Like, what's making you miserable, again, because we think it's what's going on outside. That's only 20% of it though. 80% of it is your self-talk. And so So that's happened for a number of clients that I've had.
Yeah.
Like things get really good where they're at, and
Right.
then they get the offer for, a different job, or sometimes they stay. The client I just shared her story, she ended up staying. She's like, I actually love my work. I just didn't realize it. And then
Yeah.
got the CEO position of the organization that she, was thought miserable in to begin
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. And I think that, the message here as well is the accountability factor.
You play a role. So listen, if you're the writer of your own story,
Yeah.
right? You think of it with that metaphor, then of course you're a character. You play a role in that
Yeah.
story. Everybody plays a role.
Right.
And so once you recognize, and people and the surface, sometimes they resist that idea. But the reality is, as we talked about, this takes us full circle to the front of the call when we started,
Yeah.
that it is actually the most empowering place for you to be, because now, I
Yeah.
have a choice. I have a choice.
Yeah.
I can change some things. I can do some things differently.
Yeah.
Everything isn't out of my control. And
Yeah.
that's where the magic happens. But it's not about fault. It's not about
Right.
blame. It's
Right.
not about anyone being the problem, whether it's you or another character. It's
Yeah.
just that we're all in the story and we all are playing roles. So what role do you want to play?
This has been a great episode. I
Awesome.
love that we can, one of the beautiful things about, having podcasts is that they can sit out there for eternity. And I
Yeah.
do believe that people can listen and absorb information when the time is right for them, right?
Mhm.
We talked about the but I
Mhm.
think people may search for it on their own first. And I like that we're mainstreaming this because
Yeah.
we're
Mainstream it,
all
write it down.
affected by it. We all have this. It's not
Yeah.
some people, it's not, the ones that are less confident. Even the confident ones have
Yeah.
to deal with their self-talk
Yeah.
and their narratives. And we all have a past and we all have a future. And this is important stuff. So, I
Yeah.
mean, check out Self-Talk. It's a
Yeah.
great book, right? I've got to read
Oh
it.
my gosh.
I've got to
Yes.
read it because it's only going to help.
Yeah.
And where else can we find you, Marianne?
So you can go to my website, which is my name,
Mm-hmm.
mariannerenner.com, and then /self-talk.
Okay.
And if you go there, you're going to get, you're going to get so many resources. You can get free chapters of the book. You can
Yeah.
buy the book. You can download a worksheet on the SEER framework.
Okay.
There's a whole workbook there
Yeah.
for free you can get that's got every tool in the book. And I want to just add real quick, Chris, because
Yeah.
we were talking about mainstreaming. I do tons of leadership training, every
Yep.
topic you can imagine. I've got a workshop on self-talk. It has become wildly my most popular leadership training in the workplace. So we are going into the workplace and mainstreaming self-talk, and people love it because it's like a permission to talk about things that we know we want to talk about, but nobody really knows how to broach the subject. So, so I
And you
love the
also
mainstreaming.
And you also do one-on-one coaching,
I do one-on-one
which is
coaching as well.
important. And all of that can be found on your website.
All of it's on the website. Yes. Thank you so much for asking.
For
I
sure.
appreciate that.
Definitely. Marianne, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
You
you.
have been a wonderful guest. You have very important topic. When's the next book?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I want to get this message out to as many people as I can. That's my
Yeah.
biggest goal right now. This is
Yeah.
meaningful message. So right now, it's just all about spreading the word, the message that when you change your self-talk, everything changes for you.
Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together.